The Holy Gospel according to Matthew, the 9th and 10th chapters. Glory to you, O Lord. Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and curing every disease and every sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them, because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore ask the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." Then Jesus summoned his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits, to cast them out and to cure every disease and every sickness. These are the names of the 12 apostles. First, Simon, also known as Peter, and his brother Andrew. James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. Philip and Bartholomew. Thomas and Matthew, the tax collector. James, son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus. Simon the Cananean, and Judas Iscariot, the one who betrayed him. These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions. Do not take a road leading to Gentiles, and do not enter a Samaritan town, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. As you go, proclaim the good news. The kingdom of heaven has come near. Cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those with a skin disease, cast out demons. You received without payment, give without payment. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
I wondered if you had ever started something and then you've gotten partway into that something and began to think, I'm not sure this is what I signed up for. I was thinking maybe it's like with sports or something like that, when you get all excited for the season to begin, but then once it starts, you start having questions like, how many times is there practice this week? Wait, how late is this game starting and how far away are we driving? You need to buy what and it costs how much? Didn't we just buy one of those last year? All right, maybe it's the parents thinking a lot of those things. But I bet the kids are sometimes asking similar questions, like how many more laps do we need to run? We have to play in the rain again. It's 100 degrees outside. Can't we just sit this one out? Or maybe it's a vacation or a trip that you've planned where you're excited about it, and then all of a sudden you get there and you look around and you think, well, the pictures on the website sure make things look better than they are. Or camping. That's always a good time, right? Always looking forward to camping, but then you always have the planning and the shopping and packing the food and having the extra food and hope things go fine on the drive to wherever you're going, and then you get there and you have to set up in the rain or the heat and do all the cooking, and well, somewhere in there's like 3 hours you're going to have a good time and enjoy the outdoors. Or maybe you've gotten really excited about a book, and you get this book, you're ready to start reading it, and you get into it and think, yeah, I'm not enjoying this book. Kim has always told me that life is too short to finish a book that you don't enjoy. But I've always said you got to finish what you start. And that's why I have a stack of like 7 books on my nightstand. Each one of them has a bookmark in it at some point, and I know I will finish them someday. At least the library hopes I do. All right, so you can see how my week's gone. But I'm sure all of you also have countless examples of being excited for something, ready to jump in with both feet, doing all the planning just to have it happen. And then as soon as you start, you find the excitement may have been a bit overblown or come about too quickly. And the thing you get involved in, you think, why am I doing this? Well, at least we would never say such a thing about following Jesus, right? Except this gospel lesson we just heard might give us a bit of a pause. Because really, knowing what this life of following Jesus involves, ultimately, I don't know why anyone would want to be a follower of Jesus. I don't know why those first 12 disciples continued to follow Jesus and do this work that he called them to do after they started getting all these instructions and teachings. And then ultimately, I don't know why we keep showing up here week after week thinking that we want to follow in these same footsteps. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why we keep showing up here, right? I mean, on the one hand, the work does sound enticing. In the time since Jesus concluded his Sermon on the Mount in Matthew's Gospel at the end of chapter 7, to the start of today's story, the Gospel of Matthew has told us specifically about 11 different people who have come to Jesus and were healed and were made well. And those 11 are in addition to this general comment that the Gospel writer makes to say that there were also many others who were possessed with demons and who were sick and who were healed by Jesus. And this is the power that he gives to his disciples. And so who wouldn't want to have this kind of power that could bring about healing and wholeness? Power that could make ourselves better, make this world better. And really, that's what these disciples were tasked with doing. This is what Jesus instructs them. So he says, as you go, proclaim the good news that the kingdom of heaven has come near. And then cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons. You received without payment, so give without payment. That sounds worthwhile and fulfilling. That sounds like something I'd want to do. But on the other hand, a problem is that we stopped reading this morning before we got to a lot of the good stuff about what it means to follow Jesus. And a lot of these specific instructions that Jesus gives to these up-and-coming apostles. Because if we would have kept reading, his instructions sound like this. He says, take no gold or silver or copper in your belts. Take no bag for your journey or 2 tunics or sandals or a staff, for laborers deserve their food. Whatever town or village you enter, find out who in it is worthy and stay there until you leave. As you enter the house, greet it. If the house is worthy, your peace will come upon it. But if it's not worthy, your peace will come back to you. And if you are not welcomed or people don't listen to your words, shake off the dust and leave that town. See, I am sending you out like sheep into the midst of wolves. So be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. And beware, for they may hand you over to councils, and they may flog you in their synagogues, and you will be dragged before governors and kings because of me as a testimony to them and to the Gentiles. What? Now good luck, wear clean underwear, don't forget to write, and come back soon. Yeah, where do I sign up for this? Why would anyone want to be a part of that? Why would anyone want to live in such a way that is filled with this many challenges or even cause us to be hated or hurt because of the name of Jesus? I mean, is it to show God how hard of workers we can be? Or to try and prove to God just how loyal we are and how deserving we are of rewards from God? Well, no, I believe it's bigger than all of that. So I've been stuck on what we heard from Jesus in last weekend's gospel story. And that's something that happens not long before today's gospel passage. And maybe you remember it from last week, but if you don't, Jesus had just called Matthew, a tax collector, to be one of those 12 disciples. And after he does that, Jesus then sits down for dinner with Matthew and with other tax collectors and with other sinners. And as they're gathered for that dinner, who else decides to show up? The Pharisees, the religious leaders. And as they look at Jesus surrounded by all these misfits, they don't like what they see. And so they ask Jesus' disciples, why does your teacher eat with those people, with tax collectors and sinners? What kind of an upright religious person would even do such a thing? And maybe you remember how Jesus responded to them. He looks at them and he says, but people who are well don't need a physician. People who are sick do. So go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. We talked a lot about that last week in worship, but those words have continued to echo in my ears this week. And I think it ultimately helps us understand why the disciples are called in this way and to this kind of work. It's not so these apostles can prove their apostoliness to Jesus. It's so that they can show the world and those around them signs of God's mercy and steadfast love. Especially in Matthew's gospel in particular, everything that Jesus does through the power of God is meant to offer God's mercy to a world in need. And isn't that what we desire too? Yeah, I think it's easy for us, any and all of us, to get caught in this trap of wanting what we do to be evidence of this sacrifice that we're willing to make for God. But what we hear in this story is Jesus telling us that what really matters is how others should experience God's mercy through our words and our actions. Last week we talked about how challenging this could be. And I think it's one of those things that sounds great as we get started. Yeah, I want to be a disciple. But once we start down that road and get into this and start hearing all these instructions and teachings, we start to see that maybe this isn't what we signed up for. But here in a few minutes, we're going to hear some familiar baptismal promises. Promises that are being made and some promises that are being affirmed. These promises that are being made by Jackson and promises by his family and his sponsors and ultimately by all of us. And they're promises, again, that it will later be affirmed when someone joins the church or gets confirmed down the road. And these are promises to raise the one being baptized in a way. And these are the words we use, so that they may learn to trust God, proclaim Christ through word and deed, care for others in the world God made, and work for justice and peace. And those on the surface sound like great promises to be making, right? Until we start to dig into them and realize that this can affect every aspect of how we live and can be quite a challenge. But don't run away yet. I know I'm making it sound really great. But this good news shows us how worth it this is. God shows us and the world how worth it this life of following is. With God as our shepherd, we are led into this world to participate in this harvest. We are called in these promises to share bread with the hungry, to extend Christ's peace wherever we find ourselves, and to offer words of mercy to a hurting world. And it doesn't just end there. It doesn't end with the task that we are sent to do. We are also promised that as God's children, we too receive that mercy. We too receive fullness and hope and healing. We are promised in those waters and in every day to be fed daily by God's hope and by God's love. Thanks be to God. Amen.